Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of H.R. 505. First, I want to commend the author of this bill, my good friend and colleague, the gentleman from Hawaii, for his leadership and tireless efforts in bringing this legislation to the floor for consideration. I also want to commend my good friend, the gentlelady from Hawaii, Ms. Hirono, for her co-authorship of this legislation. Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the chairman of the committee, the gentleman from West Virginia, Mr. Ray Hall, and the senior ranking member, Mr. Young, for their support of this legislation. This bill is important for many reasons, but none more than critical than to address the serious needs of the indigenous Native Hawaiians, who are the indigenous and aboriginal people, not only who inhabited these islands way before Europeans ever arrived, but they are still there, I submit, Mr. Speaker. In 1893, a injustice took place. The government of the sovereign nation of Hawaii, then ruled by its queen, Liliuokalani, was overthrown by U.S. military forces, which later the President of the United States stated that this overthrow of the Queen's government was done without authorization, neither from the President nor from the Congress of the United States. It was not until 1993 that Congress passed a joint resolution to acknowledge and apologize on behalf of the United States of the illegal and unlawful overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom in 1893 and for the deprivation of the rights of Native Hawaiians to self-determination. This is not the first time Congress has shown deference towards the status of the indigenous Native Hawaiians. In the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act of 1921, Congress expressed and reaffirmed the special and trust relationship between the United States and the Native Hawaiians. Moreover, Congress, in passing the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act of 1921, also recognized Native Hawaiians as, and I quote, a distinct and unique indigenous people. This bill sets the institutional framework for the establishment of a relationship between the United States and the indigenous Native Hawaiians, just as Congress has done for the indigenous American Indians and the indigenous Native Alaskans. At this point, I want to personally commend the gentleman from Oklahoma, for his support of this legislation, not only as the co-chair of our Native Americans Congressional Caucus, but certainly as a proud member of the Chickasaw Nation from Oklahoma. I cannot think of a better person who understands and appreciates more of the plight and sufferings of his own indigenous peoples, and almost an exact replica of the fate of the indigenous people of Hawaii, the Native Hawaiians. I hope my colleagues and their officers have had a chance to listen to Mr. Cole's eloquent statement that he just shared with us. Mr. Speaker, I also want to note that particularly the strong support of this bill from the senior member of our committee, the gentleman from Alaska, Mr. Young. In my opinion, the gentleman from Alaska is probably the most recognized expert in this chamber who understands historically how Congress has also accepted Native Alaskans as not only a trust responsibility in the same way the American Indians are treated under the U.S. Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I submit my colleagues that this should not be a partisan issue. If there are doubts among our colleagues on the other side of the aisles, I would strongly suggest consultations with the gentleman from Oklahoma and Alaska. Mr. Speaker, after 114 years, our national government, especially this body, the Congress of the United States, which has plenary authority under the Constitution to deal with issues affecting the rights and general welfare of indigenous populations of our nation, this bill seeks to correct that remaining group, the indigenous people who inhabited the Hawaiian Islands and later established a sovereign nation, later established a treaty relations with other countries, even with our own country. After the unlawful and illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom, the status of the indigenous people of the Hawaiian Kingdom was never properly addressed by the Congress of the United States. Mr. Speaker, Congress has properly determined that American Indians of the lower 48 states are an indigenous people. We also declare the Native Alaskans as an indigenous people. The only remaining group to be recognized are the indigenous people of the state of Hawaii, some 400,000 Native Hawaiians. Mr. Speaker, this bill is not based upon race. It is a bill to establish a reconciliation process by giving the indigenous Native Hawaiians the same status as we have done for the indigenous American Indians and the indigenous Native Alaskans. I respectfully urge my colleague to support this bill, and I yield back.
Gentlemen.